My daughter sent me a message that read, "Do not come to my wedding, you are no longer my family." I looked at the screen for a moment, then typed a single word in reply, "Understood." I made one phone call. Exactly 24 hours later, my phone screen lit up with 83 missed calls and a voicemail inbox that was completely full. Before I tell you what happened next, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I sat at the kitchen table with the smell of wax and old leather filling the air. My hands moved in a steady rhythm, polishing the pair of black Oxfords I had bought 10 years ago. They were good shoes, solid American leather that had outlasted 3 cars and 2 presidents. I was preparing them for Saturday because a father does not walk his only daughter down the aisle in scuffed shoes. I am Douglas Hartman. I am 73 years old, and for 40 years I built bridges. I know that structural integrity is the only thing that matters. If the foundation is rotten, the bridge collapses. It is simple physics. My phone buzzed on the table, rattling against the wood. I wiped the shoe polish from my hands with a rag and picked it up, expecting a text about the rehearsal dinner logistics. Instead, I saw a wall of text from Madison. My heart did not race. My hands did not shake. I simply read the words with the same clinical detachment I used to read engineering reports on failing infrastructure. The message said, "Dad, please do not come to the wedding on Saturday. I have been thinking about this, and your presence will only embarrass me. Tyler's family is elite. They are from a different world than you. I told them you passed away 3 years ago from a heart attack. It is better this way. You are not the right image for the life I am building. Please do not make a scene. You are no longer my family." I read it twice. I wanted to make sure I had not misunderstood the data. She had told them I was dead. The man who had taught her to ride a bike. The man who had paid for her braces. The man who had just transferred $85,000 to the Pelican Hill Resort in California for this wedding was dead to her. I looked around my kitchen. It was a simple room. Formica countertops, a coffee maker from the 90s. I drove a Ford F-150 that had 200,000 miles on it. I wore flannel shirts I bought in packs of 3. To Madison, I was just a retired construction worker living on a pension. She saw the rust on the truck, but she never bothered to look under the hood. She did not know about the $4.5 million sitting in my retirement accounts and land investments. She did not know because I never felt the need to flash wealth. I believed in being rich, not looking rich. I picked up the framed photograph on the sidebar. It was Madison and me at her college graduation. She was smiling that bright smile that I now realized was a mask. I looked at it for 5 seconds. Then I walked to the trash can and dropped it in. The glass cracked against a chicken bone from last night's dinner. I sat back down and typed my reply. Understood. Then I hit send. I did not cry. Tears are for people who have hope, and my hope had just evaporated. Now there was only calculation. I looked at the clock. It was 1 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. The wedding was Saturday. I had time, but I had to be precise. I opened my contact list and found the number for Zoe, the wedding planner Madison had hired. She was a high-energy woman who charged 15% of the total budget and used words like aesthetic and vibe too much. I pressed call. Zoe answered on the second ring, her voice breathless and chipper. "Hi, Douglas. I am so glad you called. We are finalizing the floral arrangements for the archway, and Madison wanted to upgrade to imported orchids. It is only an extra $4,000, I interrupted her. "Zoe, this is Douglas Hartman. I am the account holder for the contract." "Yes, Douglas, about the orchids. Listen to me closely, Zoe. I want you to cancel the wedding." There was a silence on the line. A long, confused silence. Then a nervous laugh. "I am sorry, Douglas. The connection must be bad." "I thought you said cancel." "You heard me correctly. Cancel the venue. Cancel the catering. Cancel the flowers. Cancel the band. I want it all shut down immediately." "But sir, the wedding is in 3 days. Guests are already flying in. We cannot just cancel. The cancellation fees will be astronomical. You will lose 50% of the deposit. I do not care about the fees, Zoe. I care about the refund of the remaining 50%. I want it back in my account by 5 o'clock this afternoon, or I will have my lawyer Leonard Weiss contact you regarding breach of contract. I signed the checks, Zoe. I control the event. But Madison, she will be devastated. Does she know? Madison is dead to me, just as I am apparently dead to her. Process the cancellation. Zoe, now. I hung up the phone while she was still stammering. I could imagine her panic. She was watching an $85,000 commission dissolve in real time. But that was not my problem. My problem was cleaning up the mess of my generosity. I remembered the day Madison had come to me 6 months ago. She sat in this very kitchen crying crocodile tears. She told me Tyler was the one. She told me she wanted a fairy tale. She said, "Dad, you worked so hard your whole life, can't you just do this one thing for me?" I had hesitated. It was a lot of money. But I looked at her and saw my little girl. I ate bologna sandwiches for lunch for a month just out of habit to justify the expense in my head. I thought I was buying her happiness. I was just buying her a stage to perform on. I picked up the phone again. Next on the list was the travel agent. We had booked a 2-week honeymoon to the Maldives. First-class tickets, overwater bungalow, $20,000. It was my wedding gift to them. The agent answered. "This is Douglas Hartman. Reference number 4492 Alpha. Cancel the entire itinerary. Sir, those tickets are non-refundable. I know. I do not want the money back. I just want the tickets voided. I want to ensure that if anyone tries to board that plane under those names, the system flags them as invalid. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir. We can cancel the reservation." "Good. Do it." I hung up. That was $20,000 set on fire. It felt satisfying. It felt like burning a bridge to stop an invading army. My final call was to the bank. I had given Madison a supplementary credit card 2 years ago. I told her it was for emergencies, car breakdowns, medical copays. Last month, the bill had shown $3,000 at a luxury handbag store. When I asked her, she said it was an investment for her career in marketing. I had let it slide. I always let it slide. I dialed the fraud department. "This is Douglas Hartman. I want to report a card as compromised. No, not stolen. Compromised by bad judgment. I want to close the supplementary account ending in 4588. Effective immediately. Yes, decline all pending charges." When I hung up the phone, the house was silent. The ticking of the wall clock seemed louder than usual. I looked at the shoes on the table, one gleaming black, the other still dull and matte. I picked up the rag and started polishing the second shoe. I would not be needing them for a wedding anymore, but a man takes care of his tools. I walked to the cabinet and bypassed the good scotch I was saving for the toast. Instead, I grabbed a bottle of red wine from the grocery store that cost $9. I poured a glass and sat in my recliner. The television was off. I just sat there watching the dust motes dance in the afternoon light. I knew what was coming. I knew the physics of the situation. I had just removed the support pillars from a very expensive structure. Gravity would do the rest. It would take time for the information to travel. Zoe would have to call Madison. The travel agent would send the cancellation email. The credit card would be declined at whatever brunch spot she was sitting in right now. I took a sip of the cheap wine. It tasted like vinegar and iron. It tasted like freedom. I turned my phone off and placed it on the side table. I closed my eyes and let the silence wash over me. I thought about the little girl who used to run to the door when I came home from construction sites, her hands reaching for my helmet. I mourned her. That little girl was gone. She had been replaced by a stranger who was ashamed of my calloused hands. The sun went down. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich. I read a book about the history of the Hoover Dam. I slept soundly for 8 hours. When I woke up the next morning, I made coffee. I sat on the porch and watched the sunrise. Then I walked back inside and turned my phone on. The device vibrated so hard it nearly danced off the table. Notifications flooded the screen in a chaotic stream. 83 missed calls. 150 text messages. The numbers were staggering. I scrolled through them. The progression of emotions was fascinating. It started with confusion. Dad, Zoe just called me and said there is a mistake with the venue payment. Call her, please. Then it moved to panic. Dad, why are you not answering? The travel agent sent a cancellation notice. What is happening? Then came the anger. Are you insane? You cannot do this. Pick up the phone right now. And finally, the threats. This was where Tyler, the fiancé, entered the picture. You crazy old man, you better fix this or you will regret it. You have no idea who you are messing with. I chuckled dryly. They thought they were the ones with power. They thought because I drove a truck and fixed my own sink that I was weak. They confused kindness with weakness. It is a common mistake. I opened a text from Madison sent at 3 a.m. You are ruining my life. How could you be so selfish? I hate you. I put the phone down and took a sip of coffee. I was not ruining her life. I was simply exiting it as she had requested. She wanted me gone. I was gone. The fact that my wallet went with me was just a collateral consequence she had failed to calculate. A loud banging on my front door broke the morning calm. It was not a knock. It was an assault. I heard Madison screaming from the porch. Dad, open this door. Open it right now. I stood up slowly. I did not rush. I walked to the door and unlocked the deadbolt. I opened it to find Madison and Tyler standing there. Madison looked like a wreck. Her eyes were puffy and her hair was in a messy bun. She was wearing designer sweatpants that I had probably paid for. Tyler stood behind her looking aggressive in a tight polo shirt. He was 30 years old and called himself an entrepreneur, but I had never actually seen him work. Madison pushed past me into the living room. Fix it. Fix it right now. Zoe says she refunded the money to you. Send it back. Tell her it was a mistake. I closed the door and leaned against it, crossing my arms. Hello to you too, Madison. Would you like some coffee? Stop it. Stop acting like this is normal. You canceled my wedding. You humiliated me. I walked past her and sat in my recliner. I did not cancel your wedding, Madison. I simply removed my financial participation. You are free to have any wedding you can afford. She stared at me, her mouth open. We can't afford it. You know we can't. The balance is due today. If we don't pay, we lose the date. Guests are landing tonight. That sounds like a problem for Tyler's family. After all, they are the elite ones, right? They are the ones you wanted to impress. Let them write the check. Tyler stepped forward, his face turning red. Listen here, old man. My parents are not liquid right now. Their assets are tied up in investments. We need your cash flow. I looked at Tyler. I had always suspected he was hollow. Now I was sure. Tied up in investments was code for broke. So let me get this straight, I said. You told your wealthy family that I was dead because I was an embarrassment. But you needed my dead man's money to pay for the party where you would celebrate my absence. Madison flinched. It wasn't like that. They are different, Dad. They judge people. I didn't want them to look down on us because I look like a construction worker. Because you act like one, she snapped. You drive that junk truck. You refuse to wear nice suits. You count coupons at the grocery store. It is embarrassing. Tyler's dad is a plastic surgeon. His mom is a socialite. I just wanted one day where I fit in. One day where I didn't have to explain you. The truth hung in the air. It was ugly and naked. She was ashamed of the very sweat that had paid for her education. I looked at her and felt the last tether snap. Get out. What? Get out of my house, and you said I am no longer your family. I am honoring your request. You are strangers to me. And strangers do not get $85,000 parties. Madison's face twisted. You can't do this. You have obligations. I have no obligations to a woman who killed me off to impress a bunch of strangers. Tyler grabbed a vase from the side table and threw it on the floor. It shattered. You are going to pay us, you miserable miser, or I will make you pay. I looked at the shattered ceramic. That vase was cheap, but the disrespect was expensive. I stood up. I am 6'2". I spent 40 years carrying steel beams and pouring concrete. Tyler spent his life at the gym looking at himself in the mirror. There is a difference in the kind of strength we have. I stepped into his personal space. Tyler, get out of my house before I call the sheriff. And Madison, if you ever come back here, I will file a restraining order. Madison looked at me with genuine fear. She had never seen this side of me. She had only seen the checkbook. She grabbed Tyler's arm. Come on, Ty. He is crazy. We will figure this out. We will sue him. They retreated to the door. Before she left, Madison turned back. You are going to die alone, old man, and no one will come to your funeral. I looked at her. Better to die alone than to live surrounded by vultures. She slammed the door. I heard their car tires squeal as they peeled out of the driveway. I looked at the broken vase. I went to the kitchen, got the broom and dustpan, and swept it up. I sat back down and finished my coffee. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. My hands were steady. The initial explosion was over. But I knew construction. I knew that after the demolition comes the dust cloud. They were desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. They needed that money, and they would come back for it. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had not called in a long time. Leonard Weiss. He was not just my lawyer. He was my platoon leader in Vietnam. We had trusted each other with our lives. Now I needed him to help me protect my life's work. Leonard answered on the first ring. Doug. It's been a while. Everything okay? No, Leo. I need you to open a file. I need a full background check on a man named Tyler Donovan and his parents. And I need you to prepare a defense strategy. What kind of defense, Doug? The kind against family. My daughter just declared war on me, and I intend to win. Leonard didn't ask questions. He just said, I'm on it. I'll have the dossier by tomorrow. I hung up. I was not just a retired man anymore. I was a general engaging in a new campaign. The enemy was at the gates, and they were loud and stupid. But I had the high ground. I had the truth, and I had the money. And I was about to teach them that you do not bite the hand that feeds you unless you want to starve. I went to my computer and pulled up the security camera feed. I saw them driving away. I saved the clip of Tyler breaking the vase. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. The game had changed. They wanted a show. I would give them one. But it wouldn't be the wedding they expected. The silence in the house after they left was heavy, but the silence on my phone was short-lived. Less than an hour after I kicked Madison and Tyler out, the device began to vibrate again across the coffee table. It was a different kind of rhythm this time. It was not the chaotic panic of the morning. It was a steady, calculated bombardment. I picked it up and adjusted my glasses. I did not just read the messages, I dissected them. I looked for the strategy behind the words, because I knew my daughter, and I knew she was not smart enough to come up with this on her own. This had Tyler's desperate fingerprints all over it. The first new message was from Madison. It read, Dad, we are worried about you. You were acting so erratic today. You were violent. That is not like you. We think you might be having an episode. I stared at the screen and felt a cold appreciation for their tactics. They were pivoting. They realized that anger would not unlock my bank account, so now they were trying to construct a narrative. They were laying the groundwork to question my sanity. They wanted to paint me as a confused, violent old man who needed a guardian who would naturally control the checkbook. I did not reply. I swiped to the next message. It was a photo. A blurry picture of me standing in the doorway earlier that morning, pointing my finger at Tyler. From that angle, I looked aggressive. I looked unhinged. Below the photo was a caption from Tyler. "It would be a shame if social services saw how unstable you have become, Douglas. We just want to help you manage your assets before you hurt yourself." I took a sip of my cold coffee. It was a classic extortion play. Clumsy, but dangerous. They were threatening me with the one thing society fears for the elderly, the loss of autonomy. They thought the threat of a nursing home or a competency hearing would make me sign the check for the Pelican Hill Resort. They underestimated my documentation. They did not know about the security cameras that had recorded the entire interaction in high definition, including Tyler smashing my vase and screaming threats. They had a blurry photo. I had a 4K movie with clear audio. I forwarded the messages to Leonard. I added a simple note. Add this to the file. Harassment and attempted extortion. Then I went to the kitchen and made a fresh pot of coffee. I needed to be sharp. The phone rang again. It was Leonard. It was, "Doug, I got your texts. These kids are playing a dangerous game. I know Leo. They are desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Did you run the background check?" I did. "And Doug, you are going to want to sit down for this. It is better than we thought. It is a comedy of errors." I sat down at the kitchen table. "Tell me, remember how Madison said Tyler's family was elite? Plastic surgeon father, socialite mother. Beverly Hills money, I remember. That was the reason I had to die. I was not good enough for them." "Well," Leonard chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. "It turns out Dr. Donovan hasn't practiced medicine in 4 years. He lost his license for malpractice. And the mother. She is currently being audited by the IRS for tax evasion on a failed boutique business. They are drowning, Doug. They have liens on their house. They have maxed out credit cards. They are not elite. They are broke." I listened, and the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with a satisfying snap. It was a double con, a perfect circle of lies. "So Tyler is broke," I said. "Completely. And here is the kicker, Doug. Tyler thinks Madison is the heiress to an oil fortune." "What?" "I found emails in the discovery phase of a lawsuit Tyler was involved in last year. He bragged to a creditor that his fiancée was the daughter of a Texas oil baron who had retired to a private life. He thinks you are sitting on $50 million. I started to laugh. It started as a rumble in my chest and turned into a full belly laugh that echoed in the empty house. It was absurd. It was beautiful. Madison had lied to Tyler to land him. Tyler had lied to Madison to land her. And both of them were looking at me, a retired bridge builder, as the only source of actual liquid cash in the entire equation. "So they are trying to con each other," I said, wiping a tear from my eye. "Exactly," Leonard said. "And they are both counting on your money to keep the charade going. Tyler's parents are flying in tonight. They think they are coming to a lavish wedding paid for by the oil baron. If you don't pay, the house of cards falls down." "Then let it fall," I said. "Let it all come down." "There is one more thing, Doug." Leonard's voice dropped an octave. "I checked the county clerk records. Tyler applied for a marriage license 3 days ago, but he also filed a query about community property laws and spousal support in case of divorce. He hasn't even married her yet, and he is already looking at the exit strategy. He is a predator," I said, my voice hardening. "Yes. And right now you are the prey. They are coming for you, Doug. They have nothing to lose." I hung up the phone and looked at the screen again. Another message from Madison. "Dad, please. Tyler's parents land in 4 hours. We need to pay the venue rebooking fee. Just transfer $10,000. That's all we need for today. We can discuss the rest later. Please. I don't want to be humiliated." I looked at the plea. She did not want to be humiliated. She had told a room full of strangers I was dead. She had erased my existence to upgrade her social status. And now she wanted me to finance the lie. I typed a reply. I am sorry. I cannot transfer money. My accounts are frozen pending an investigation into elder abuse and attempted extortion. I have been advised by my lawyer to cease all financial activity until the competency hearing you threatened me with is resolved. I hit send. It was a lie, of course. My accounts were fine, but I wanted them to feel the walls closing in. I wanted them to know that their own threats were the reason they were going to starve. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was high now. The world looked bright and normal outside. But inside, the game had shifted. I was not just defending myself anymore. I was preparing a trap. I knew they wouldn't stop. They couldn't. They had guests arriving. They had lies to uphold. They would try something drastic. And when they did, I would be ready. I picked up my car keys. It was time to go shopping. Not for a tuxedo, but for a new suit. If I was going to crash a wedding of liars, I needed to look like the oil baron they claimed I was. I was going to walk into that rehearsal dinner, and I was going to burn their fantasy to the ground with the truth. The banging on the door was not a request for entry. It was a demand for submission. I sat in my recliner for a long moment, watching the dust motes dance in the shaft of morning sunlight that hit the worn oak floorboards. The wood was scratched from years of work boots and dog claws, a history map of a life lived, not performed. The pounding came again, louder this time, accompanied by the muffled sound of Tyler's voice shouting something about a lawsuit. I stood up. My knees popped a familiar sound that reminded me I was 73, but my spine straightened out of a habit drilled into me by drill sergeants and site foremen. I walked to the door, not with fear, but with the heavy, inevitable momentum of a steamroller. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. The heat of the morning rushed in, but it was nothing compared to the heat coming off the two people standing on my porch. Madison looked like a pageant queen who had survived a hurricane. Her hair, usually lacquered into submission, was fraying at the edges. She wore oversized sunglasses that cost more than my first car, likely hiding eyes red from crying or lack of sleep. But it was Tyler who drew my attention. He was vibrating with rage, his face flushed a blotchy red that clashed with his pastel polo shirt. He looked at my house, at the peeling paint on the railing, at the overgrown azalea bush, with a sneer of absolute disgust. "We need to talk," Madison snapped, pushing past me before I could step aside. She brought the scent of expensive perfume and desperation into my living room. Tyler followed, stopping in the entryway to wipe his pristine white loafers on my rug, as if he had stepped in something foul. "Smells like mothballs and poverty in here," he muttered loud enough for me to hear. I closed the door gently. "Good morning to you too," I said, walking past them to the kitchen. "I was just having coffee. I assume you're here to return the key to the house you no longer consider family property." "Cut the crap, old man," Tyler barked, stepping into the living room and looking around with disdain. "We know what you did. You canceled the payments. You committed fraud." I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, the black liquid swirling in the mug. "Fraud implies deception." "Tyler, I was very transparent. I stopped paying for a party I wasn't invited to." Madison spun around and her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "You were invited. You were the host. You can't just pull the rug out 3 days before the event. Do you know what you've done? The coordinator is threatening to release the reserved rooms. The caterer is putting a hold on the food order. You are humiliating me." "I am humiliating you?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "Madison, you told the Donovan family I was dead. You erased 40 years of fatherhood with a single lie because my job title didn't fit your narrative. You didn't want a father. You wanted an ATM ghost." "It wasn't like that," Madison screamed, her voice cracking. "You don't understand their world, Dad. Tyler's mother. She's a DAR member. His father golfs with senators. If I told them my father was a retired construction worker who lives in a shack like this..." She gestured vaguely at my cozy, paid-off living room. "They would have judged me. They would have thought I was after their money." I took a sip of coffee. So to prove you weren't after their money, you used my money to pretend you had your own. That is a fascinating logic loop. Tyler stepped forward, puffing out his chest. He was a gym rat, all glamour muscles and no functional strength. Look, Doug, we get it. You're hurt. You got your feelings bruised. Boo-hoo. But this is business now. Contracts are signed. Guests are in the air. You have a contractual obligation to see this through. I have a contract with the vendors, I corrected him. A contract I terminated. I have no contract with you, Tyler. In fact, I barely know you. I know you like imported beer and you drive a leased BMW, but I don't know a single thing about your character. Although standing here in my living room insulting my home, I'm starting to get a pretty clear picture. Tyler laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. Your home, this isn't a home, Doug. It's a teardown. Look at this furniture. Is that velvet? It's disgusting. Madison told me you were tight with money, but I didn't realize you lived like a squatter. No wonder she told my parents you were dead. It was a mercy killing for your reputation. The insult landed, but it didn't sting. It just clarified things. He wasn't just greedy, he was cruel. And cruelty is a weakness. This house, I said, my voice dropping to a low rumble, is 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and sits on 2 acres of land. It has a new roof, copper plumbing, and a foundation I poured myself. And most importantly, Tyler, it is paid for. I own every splinter of wood and every grain of dust in here. Can you say the same about your condo downtown, or is the bank the real owner of your lifestyle? Tyler's face twitched. I had hit a nerve. Madison stepped between us. Stop it. Stop fighting, Dad, please. We can fix the lie. We can say you were in a coma. Or you were away on business and we lost touch. We can spin it. Just pay the vendors. Please. If you don't, Tyler's parents will know everything. Know what? I asked. That you're a liar or that you're broke? Both, she shrieked. They think I have a trust fund. They think you left me millions. If the wedding is canceled because of non-payment, they'll know I have nothing. They'll know I'm a fraud. I looked at my daughter. I looked for the little girl who used to cry when she scraped her knee. I couldn't find her. All I saw was a stranger who had built a cage of lies and was now demanding I pay the rent for it. You are a fraud, Madison, I said quietly. You're selling a version of yourself that doesn't exist to buy the affection of people who don't matter. And you're asking me to pay the price tag. It's for my future, she argued. Tyler is going to be huge. His tech startup is about to launch. We just need to get through this wedding, secure the network, and we'll be set. You're investing in us. I looked at Tyler. What startup? The one selling nutritional supplements on Instagram, or the one consulting for brand synergy? I looked you up, son. You haven't filed a tax return with a profit in 5 years. Tyler's eyes went wide. You investigated me. I did. I wanted to know who my daughter was killing me off for. Turns out I died for a man who has a credit score lower than my age. Tyler snapped. He grabbed the porcelain vase sitting on the mantel, a gift from my late wife, blue and white delicate china, and hurled it at the floor. It exploded into 1,000 shards, the sound ringing like a gunshot in the small room. You think you're better than me? Tyler screamed, spit flying from his mouth. You're nothing. You're a dirt digger. I have vision. I have potential. You just have a pile of dirt and a sad little life. I looked at the shattered vase. It was just a thing. Things break. But the disrespect, the violence in my sanctuary, that was something else. I set my coffee mug down on the counter with a deliberate click. That vase, I said, my voice devoid of emotion, was your one free pass. You just used it. I walked toward them. I didn't rush. I didn't raise my hands. I just walked with the weight of a man who has moved mountains of earth. Tyler flinched. He expected a fight. He expected me to swing. He didn't know how to handle a man who simply advanced like a glacier. Get out, I said. We're not leaving until you write the check. Tyler spat, though he took a step back. You are leaving because you just committed property damage and are currently trespassing, I said. And because if you don't leave in the next 30 seconds, I am going to call my friend, Sheriff Miller. And unlike your connections, Sheriff Miller actually picks up my calls." Madison grabbed Tyler's arm. She saw something in my face that Tyler was too stupid to recognize. She saw the end. "Let's go, Ty," she whispered. "He means it." "I'm not afraid of this old man," Tyler blustered, but he let her pull him toward the door. "You should be," I said. "Not because I'm going to hit you, but because I'm the only person in this room who deals in reality. And reality is coming for you, Tyler. It's coming fast." They stumbled out onto the porch. The morning sun hit them, exposing the cheap fabric of Tyler's shirt and the frantic sweat on Madison's brow. They looked small. They looked like children playing dress-up in clothes that didn't fit. "You'll regret this," Madison screamed from the driveway, her voice shrill and ugly. "You're dead to me, for real this time." "I know," I said, standing in the doorway. "I've been dead for 3 years, remember. Rest in peace, Madison." I slammed the door. I locked it. Then I leaned my forehead against the cool wood and took a deep breath. My heart was beating slow and steady. The adrenaline was there, but it was cold. I turned back to the living room. The shards of my wife's vase were scattered across the floor, glittering in the sun. I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity. The last link was broken. The vase was gone, and so was the illusion that I could save my daughter from herself. I went to the closet and got the broom. As I swept up the pieces of the past, I formulated the plan for the future. They wanted a war. They wanted to talk about money and status and power. Fine, I would speak their language. But I would do it with the vocabulary of a man who knows where the bodies are buried because he dug the holes. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call the sheriff. I called Leonard. It was time to stop defending and start attacking. If they wanted to play rich elite, I was going to invite them to the most expensive lesson of their lives. The silence in the house after the front door slammed was heavy, but it was the kind of heaviness I was used to. It was the weight of a job site after the crew had gone home and you were left alone to inspect the pour. I walked to the kitchen and poured the rest of the cold coffee down the sink. I watched the brown liquid swirl and vanish just like the image of the father I thought I was. My phone rang on the counter. It was Leonard. I picked it up. I didn't say hello, I just said, "Tell me everything, Leo." Leonard Weiss has a voice like gravel in a cement mixer. He does not sugarcoat. He does not pause for dramatic effect. He gives you the specs and lets you decide if the building will stand. "Doug." "Are you sitting down?" he asked. "I am standing, Leo. Just give it to me." "All right." I dug into the background of the Donovan family like you asked. But before we get to them, we need to talk about you, or rather the version of you that exists in the mind of Tyler Donovan and his parents. "What are you talking about?" "I found a digital footprint, Doug. It seems Madison didn't just tell them you were dead. She created a legacy. According to a fake obituary posted on a genealogy site 3 years ago, and several social media posts from her archived accounts. You were not a construction contractor. You were a silent partner in a Texas oil consortium. You died of a heart attack on your ranch, leaving behind a vast fortune held in a blind trust for your only daughter." I felt my grip on the phone tighten until the plastic creaked. Oil. She had turned 40 years of sweating in the sun, pouring concrete, and calculating load-bearing walls into a fantasy about oil. It was not just a lie. It was an erasure. She had looked at my life, at the honest work that put food on her table and clothes on her back, and she had decided it wasn't enough. It wasn't shiny enough. "She reinvented me, Leo," I said, my voice low. "She did more than that, Doug. She mythologized you. The reason you can't be at the wedding isn't just because you're supposed to be dead. It is because the reality of you destroys the illusion of her wealth. You drive a 15-year-old truck. You wear flannel. You have calluses on your hands that you can't scrub off. If you walked into that ballroom looking like a man who actually works for a living, the Donovans would know instantly that she isn't an heiress. She removed you because you are a plot hole in her story. I walked to the window and looked out at my truck parked in the driveway. It was a good truck. It had hauled lumber for the deck I built for Madison's 16th birthday. It had hauled her furniture to her college dorm. Now it was just evidence of my failure to be the father she wanted. So I am too country for them, I said. I am too blue-collar. Exactly, Leonard said. You are the wrong kind of money. But here is where it gets interesting, Doug. Here is the twist that makes this whole thing a tragedy of errors. I am listening. I ran the financials on the Donovan family, Tyler's parents, Dr. Marcus Donovan and his wife Sylvia. Madison thinks they are the elite. She thinks they are old money Beverly Hills royalty. She killed you off to impress them. And they are broke, Doug. Not just cash poor. I mean destitute. Dr. Donovan lost his medical license 4 years ago after a malpractice suit involving a botched cosmetic procedure. He hasn't worked since. They mortgaged their house to the hilt to pay the settlement. They are currently 3 months behind on that mortgage. They are driving leased cars that are about to be repossessed. Sylvia Donovan is being investigated by the IRS for tax evasion related to a charity she supposedly runs. I leaned against the counter, feeling a strange bubble of laughter rising in my chest. It wasn't happy laughter. It was the laughter of a man watching a bridge collapse because someone used cheap bolts. So let me get this straight, I said. My daughter lied and said I was a dead oil tycoon to impress a family of frauds who are pretending to be rich while they are actually drowning in debt. That is the situation, Leonard confirmed. And it explains Tyler's aggression this morning. They aren't just greedy, Doug. They are desperate. They think Madison is their lifeline. They think marrying her gives them access to this imaginary oil trust fund. They are banking on your death money to save them from bankruptcy. That is why Tyler was so frantic about the wedding being canceled. If the wedding doesn't happen, the merger doesn't happen. And if the merger doesn't happen, the Donovans lose everything. The pieces clicked together with the precision of a steel trap. It was a double con. Madison was conning them to gain status. They were conning her to gain solvency, and I was the only person in the entire equation with actual liquid assets. I was the bank they were all trying to rob, but none of them had the combination because they were too busy lying to each other. This is incredible, I whispered. They are all wolves trying to eat each other. And you are the sheepdog, Doug Leonard said. But right now they think you are just an obstacle, a stubborn old man standing in the way of their payday. They don't know, you know. No, they don't, I said. They think I am just hurt. They think I am lashing out because my feelings are bruised. They have no idea I see the whole board. What do you want to do, Doug? I can file a restraining order. I can send cease and desist letters. We can tie them up in court for years. No, I said. The anger I had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a cold clarity. Legal paperwork is too slow, and it is too private. They humiliated me privately, but they want to celebrate publicly. They want to have this rehearsal dinner tonight at that fancy steakhouse downtown. They want to parade around in front of their investors and friends pretending to be royalty. You want to crash the party? Leonard asked, his voice sounding intrigued. I don't want to crash it, Leo. I want to end it. But I can't walk in there as Doug the construction worker. That plays into their narrative. They will just say, I am the crazy uncle or a hired actor. Then who do you want to be? I want to be the man they invented. I want to be the oil tycoon. I want to walk in there and show them exactly what power looks like. But I need proof, Leo. I need you to print out everything you found. The malpractice suit, the IRS audit, the foreclosure notices on the Donovan house. And I need the fake obituary Madison wrote. I want it all in a nice leather binder. I can have that ready in 2 hours, Leonard said. But Doug, are you sure? This is the nuclear option. Once you do this, there is no going back. You will lose her. I looked at the empty spot on the wall where Madison's graduation photo used to hang. I already lost her, Leo. She killed me 3 years ago, remember? I am just the ghost coming back to haunt the house. I hung up the phone. My hands were steady. My heart was slow. I went to my bedroom and opened the closet. Pushed to the back behind the flannel shirts and the work jackets was a garment bag I hadn't touched in years. I unzipped it. Inside was a tuxedo, custom-made, Italian wool. I had bought it for a gala I attended with my late wife 10 years ago. She had told me I looked like James Bond. I touched the fabric. It still felt expensive. It felt like armor. I stripped off my work clothes. I showered, scrubbing the grease and the garden dirt from my hands until my skin was raw. I shaved my face close and clean. I combed my gray hair back. When I put on the tuxedo, it fit a little looser than it used to, but that just made it look more comfortable, more lived in. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see a bridge builder. I saw a man who owned the company that bought the bridge. I was ready. They wanted a dead billionaire. They were about to get a very live one. And I was going to bring the truth down on their heads like a 10-ton hammer. I walked out to my truck. It looked out of place with the tuxedo, but that was part of the point. I drove into town. I stopped at the bank and went to my safety deposit box. I took out a watch. A Patek Philippe my father had left me. It was worth more than Tyler's car. I strapped it on. Then I drove to Leonard's office. When I walked in, the receptionist gasped. Leonard came out of his office holding a thick leather binder. He looked me up and down and smiled a wolfish grin. "You look like a man who is about to buy the whole town, Doug." "I don't want the town, Leo. I just want my dignity back. And I want to make sure these grifters never hurt anyone else again." Leonard handed me the binder. It was heavy. It felt like a weapon. "The rehearsal dinner starts at 7, Leo said. "The Donovans have rented the private room at the Gilded Steer. Madison is there now trying to calm everyone down. She told them you agreed to pay and the check is in the mail. She is doubling down on the lie." "Of course she is," I said. "She has no other play." I took the binder and walked back to the truck. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and bruised orange. It was a beautiful night for a reckoning. I put the truck in gear and headed toward the restaurant. The road was smooth. The bridge I was crossing was one I had helped build 20 years ago. It was strong. It held the weight. Tonight I would find out if Madison and Tyler could hold the weight of the truth. I suspected they would crumble, and I would be there to watch the dust settle. The notification on my phone did not sound like a bell. It sounded like a gavel hitting a judge's bench. I was sitting in Leonard's office surrounded by mahogany bookshelves that smelled of dust and old contract law when the message came through. It was not a text. It was an email with a high-importance flag attached to it. The subject line read simply, "Urgent family matter regarding competency." I opened it. It was a letter drafted by a lawyer. I did not know, but whose letterhead looked expensive. It was addressed to me, but carbon-copied to Madison and Tyler. The language was precise, brutal, and filled with the kind of legal violence that leaves no bruises but breaks bones. It stated that due to my recent erratic behavior, violent outbursts, and sudden irrational financial decisions, my daughter, Madison Hartman, was filing an emergency petition for temporary conservatorship. It claimed I was exhibiting signs of early-onset dementia and paranoid delusions. It cited the cancellation of the wedding payments as evidence of financial self-harm. It demanded I surrender control of my assets to a court-appointed guardian immediately to prevent further dissipation of the estate. And the kicker was the final paragraph. It said that if I did not comply voluntarily by noon tomorrow, they would file a motion to have me involuntarily evaluated by the state. I handed the phone to Leonard. He read it without blinking. His face was a map of deep lines and cynicism carved from 40 years of watching families destroy each other over money. "This is the nuclear option, Doug," he said quietly, handing the phone back. "They are not just trying to get the wedding money anymore. They are trying to erase you. They want to invalidate your personhood so they can assume legal ownership of your checkbook." I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It was the feeling of standing on a frozen lake and hearing the ice crack beneath your boots. Madison was not just a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. She was an adversary. She was willing to label me insane, to brand me with a scarlet letter of incompetence just to keep her lie alive. She would lock me away in a facility and drug me into a stupor if it meant she could keep her country club membership. They are betting on you being scared, Leonard continued. They think the threat of a competency hearing will make you sign the check for the Pelican Hill Resort just to make the problem go away. It is extortion wrapped in the guise of concern. I looked at the email again. I saw Tyler's phrasing in the sentences. Irrational financial decisions. That was his voice. Madison did not know words like dissipation of assets. So they want a war, I said, my voice steady. They want a surrender, Leonard corrected. But they are going to get a massacre. He opened the leather binder on his desk. It was thick, filled with the results of his 24-hour deep dive into the Donovan family. Let's look at the people who are questioning your sanity, Doug. Let's look at the pillars of society Madison is so desperate to impress. He slid a photo across the desk. It was a mugshot. It was Dr. Marcus Donovan Tyler's father. He looked younger in the photo, less gray, but the arrogance was the same. DUI and possession of a controlled substance 4 years ago, Leonard said, tapping the photo. That is why he lost his medical license. It wasn't just a botched surgery. He was high on prescription painkillers in the operating room. He pleaded down to avoid jail time, but he is uninsurable. He hasn't earned a legal dollar since 2019. He slid another document across. A foreclosure notice. This is their house in Beverly Hills. It is not owned by them. It is owned by a holding company that is currently evicting them for 12 months of non-payment. They are squatting in a mansion, Doug. They have been dodging the process server for weeks. And the mother I asked. Sylvia Donovan. She runs a charity called the Golden Heart Foundation. Supposedly it raises money for underprivileged children in the arts. Supposedly. According to the IRS filings, Leonard said, smiling, a shark's smile, 90% of the donations go to administrative costs. Salary for the director, travel expenses, galas. She is using the charity as a personal piggy bank to fund her lifestyle. The feds opened an investigation 2 months ago. She is not just broke, Doug. She is looking at federal prison time for wire fraud. I sat back in the leather chair. The picture was complete. They were drowning. All of them. The Donovans needed Madison's imaginary oil money to pay their legal bills and save their house. Madison needed the Donovans' imaginary status to validate her existence. It was a circle of parasites trying to feed off a host that didn't exist. And now they want to declare me incompetent, because I closed the tap, I said. Exactly. If they control you, they control the mythical millions Madison told them you have. They are desperate, Doug, and desperate people get sloppy. My phone buzzed again. It was not an email this time. It was an alert from my home security system. Motion detected in the master bedroom. I pulled up the app. The camera feed was grainy, but clear enough. I saw a figure moving through my bedroom. It was Madison. She was wearing a hoodie pulled up over her head, but I knew her walk. I knew the way she held her shoulders. She was ransacking my room. She was pulling drawers out of the dresser, dumping my clothes on the floor. She was looking for something specific. She is in my house, I said, showing the screen to Leonard. She is looking for the money, Leonard said. Or the documents. She needs proof of the trust fund to show the Donovans. She needs to buy time. I watched on the small screen as she moved to the closet. She pushed aside the heavy winter coats and knelt on the floor. She pulled up the loose floorboard in the corner. I watched her shoulders relax. She had found the safe. I had installed that floor safe 20 years ago to keep bond certificates and emergency cash. Madison knew the combination. It was her birthday. I had never changed it, because I never thought I would have to hide my life from my daughter. She punched in the numbers. The door clicked open. I watched her reach in. Her hands were shaking. She pulled out a thick blue folder. I saw her open it. I saw her read the first page. I saw her slump back against the wall, a look of pure relief washing over her face. She clutched the folder to her chest like a holy book. "What is in that folder?" Doug Leonard asked, watching the feed over my shoulder. I smiled. It was a cold smile. "That is the decoy, Leo. I put it there this morning before I left. I knew she still had a key to the back door. I knew she would come." "What does it say?" "It contains a set of forged trust documents I printed off the internet. It outlines the Hartman Family Oil Trust. It lists assets of $52 million, and it includes a clause that says the funds can only be released with the signature of the primary beneficiary, Douglas Hartman, or his legal guardian in the event of incapacitation." Leonard started to laugh. "You gave them the motive. I gave them the rope I corrected. She thinks she just found the golden ticket. She thinks she has proof that I am hoarding $50 million. She is going to take that folder to the rehearsal dinner. She is going to show it to Tyler and his parents. They are going to look at those numbers and see their salvation. They are going to think that all they have to do is force me to sign, or force the court to declare me incompetent. So they will be bold tonight," Leonard said. "They will be arrogant. They will be reckless," I said. "They will think they have won. They will think I am just a confused old man sitting on a mountain of cash that belongs to them. They will walk into that restaurant feeling invincible." I watched on the screen as Madison shoved the blue folder into her bag. She stood up and looked around the room one last time. She looked at the mess she had made of her father's life. She didn't fix it. She didn't pick up the clothes. She just turned and walked out, leaving the destruction behind her. I closed the app. "She has the bait," I said. "Now we just need to close the trap." "We have everything we need," Doug Leonard said, closing the binder. "The fraud, the debts, the break-in. We have enough to send them all to jail for 10 years. I stood up. Jail is for later. Tonight is for the truth. I want them to hear it. I want them to see it. I want to look them in the eye when the floor drops out. I adjusted my tuxedo jacket. The silk lapels felt smooth under my fingertips. I checked the Patek Philippe on my wrist. It was 6:30. The rehearsal dinner started at 7. "Let's go, Leo. I don't want to be late for my own funeral." We walked out of the office into the cooling evening air. The city lights were starting to flicker on. Somewhere in a private dining room, people were drinking champagne they couldn't pay for toasting a future that didn't exist. They were celebrating the death of Douglas the construction worker. They had no idea that Douglas the executioner was on his way. I sat in the leather chair across from Leonard Weiss, watching him organize a stack of file folders on his mahogany desk. The office smelled of lemon polish and old paper, a scent that usually calmed me, but today it felt suffocating. Leonard did not look up. He was arranging the documents with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an amputation. He placed a heavy black binder in the center of the desk and finally met my gaze. His eyes were hard and lacked their usual warmth. He looked like the platoon leader he used to be back when we were trudging through mud and trying to survive a war we didn't start. "You need to brace yourself, Doug," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "I told you the overview on the phone, but you need to see the details. You need to see the ink on the page, because if you don't, you might not believe the extent of the rot. What I found isn't just financial irresponsibility. It is a masterclass in deception." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "I am ready, Leo. Show me who my daughter is marrying." Leonard opened the first folder. It was labeled Marcus Donovan. He slid a stack of court transcripts and financial disclosure forms toward me. "This is the patriarch," he said, pointing to a mugshot stapled to the front page. "Dr. Marcus Donovan, or as the State Medical Board refers to him, formerly licensed practitioner number 49221. Madison told you he was a retired plastic surgeon living off his investments, right?" "She said he retired early to focus on philanthropy," I replied, looking at the gray face in the photograph. He looked tired and arrogant, a dangerous combination. "He retired because the state revoked his license 4 years ago," Leonard corrected. "He was sued for gross negligence involving 3 separate patients. He was operating while under the influence of opioids. The settlements were massive, Doug. They wiped out his practice, his savings, and his pension. He didn't walk away with a golden parachute. He walked away with nothing but the suit on his back and an addiction he is still fighting. I flipped through the pages. Foreclosure notices, liens, collection agency letters. It was a paper trail of a man drowning in slow motion. "He is destitute," I whispered. "It gets worse," Leonard said, opening the second folder. "This is the mother, Sylvia Donovan, the socialite. The woman Madison was so terrified of offending with my blue-collar existence." He laid out a series of tax documents and IRS audit notifications. "Sylvia runs the Golden Heart Foundation," Leonard explained. "Ideally, it raises money for underprivileged children in the arts. In reality, it is a personal slush fund. Look at the expense reports, Doug." I looked. Travel to Paris, leased luxury vehicles, designer clothing, spa treatments, all listed under administrative expenses and donor cultivation. "She is living out of the donation jar," I said, feeling a wave of disgust. "She is running a Ponzi scheme of social status," Leonard said. "She uses new donations to pay off the credit cards from the last gala. But the music stopped 6 months ago. The IRS froze the foundation's assets pending a federal investigation for wire fraud and embezzlement. She isn't just broke, Doug. She is facing federal prison time. They are currently squatting in that Beverly Hills mansion. The bank foreclosed on it 3 months ago, but they are using legal loopholes to delay the eviction. They are living on borrowed time and borrowed dimes." I sat back, the leather creaking under my weight. The picture was becoming terrifyingly clear. Madison had described a dynasty, a family of prestige and power. Instead, she was marrying into a crime scene. "So they have nothing," I said. "No money, no house, no career." "Zero," Leonard confirmed. "Negative equity. Which brings us to the groom, Tyler Donovan." He opened the third folder. It was thinner but somehow heavier. "Tyler is the hunter, Doug. He isn't just the son of failed parents. He is the architect of their survival plan. I found these in a digital discovery dump from a lawsuit Tyler was involved in last year regarding unpaid business loans. These are text messages between Tyler and his mother." I picked up the printouts. The timestamp was from 8 months ago, right around the time Tyler met Madison. The first text from Sylvia read, "We are losing the house, Ty. Your father can't get another loan. We need a miracle." Tyler's response was chilling in its brevity. "I found one. Her name is Madison. Her father is a retired oil baron from Texas. She says he is loaded. I am going to close the deal." I felt the blood drain from my face. Oil baron. That was the lie Madison had told. She had invented a wealthy father to impress them, and Tyler had targeted her specifically because of that lie. "He thinks I am the mark," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "He thinks you are the golden goose," Leonard said. "Read the next one." I looked down. A text from Tyler sent 2 weeks ago. "Almost there, Mom. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Once we are married, I will have access to the trust fund. We can pay off the house and get the IRS off your back. The old man is stupid. He writes checks without asking questions. I just need to keep him away from the wedding so he doesn't ruin the image." I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the desk, landing on top of the mugshot of his father. It was a double con. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. It was a perfect storm of deception. Madison was conning them to gain social status, pretending to be an heiress so they would accept her. They were conning her to gain financial survival, pretending to be elite so she would marry their son and unlock my imaginary vault. And I was the only thing that was real, I said. "Exactly," Leonard said, leaning back. "You are the only person in this entire equation with actual liquid assets. You have $4.5 million in clean, hard-earned money. To them, you are not a person. You are a life raft. They are all drowning, Doug. Madison, Tyler, Marcus, Sylvia. They are all in the water dragging each other down, and they are looking at you on the shore thinking you can pull them all out. But I don't have $50 million, I said. I have a pension and some land. They don't know that, Leonard said. Greed filters out reality. They see what they want to see. Madison told them you were rich, so they believe it because they need to believe it. If they stop believing it, they have to face the fact that they are bankrupted and going to jail. This explains everything I said, standing up and pacing the small office. It explains why Tyler was so aggressive this morning. It explains why they threatened to declare me incompetent. They are terrified. If the wedding doesn't happen, the merger of their lies fails. If I stop paying, the illusion shatters. Yes, Leonard said, and that is why they are dangerous. They are cornered animals. They will do anything to keep the money flowing. That email threatening the competency hearing was just the first shot. They were hoping you would panic and sign a check just to make them stop. I walked to the window and looked out at the city street below. People were walking by, living their normal, honest lives. They had no idea that in a high-rise office above them, a man was discovering that his daughter had sold him for fool's gold. Madison doesn't know, does she? I asked. She doesn't know they are broke, no, Leonard said. She thinks she won the lottery. She thinks she is marrying into American royalty. She has no idea she is marrying into a federal indictment. She thinks she is using you to buy her way into their world. She doesn't realize they are using her to buy their way out of prison. I felt a strange pang of pity for my daughter. She was cruel, yes. She was shallow and ungrateful, but she was also walking into a trap. She was about to legally bind herself to a man who viewed her as a financial transaction. If she married Tyler, she would be liable for his debts. She would be dragged down with them. I have to stop this, I said, turning back to Leonard. Not just for me, for her. You can't save her from herself, Doug Leonard warned. She made her choices. I know, I said, but I can show her the truth. I can burn the fantasy down so she can see the ashes. If I let this wedding happen, I am letting her ruin her life. I might have cut her off, but I am still her father. I cannot let her marry a predator. So what is the play? Leonard asked. We have the evidence. We can go to the police. We can file fraud charges. Too slow, I said. The rehearsal dinner is tonight. They are all going to be there. The Donovans, Tyler, Madison, the investors they are trying to swindle. It is the perfect stage. You want to do it publicly? Leonard asked, raising an eyebrow. I want to do it definitively, I answered. I want to walk into that room and lay these folders on the table. I want Madison to see the mugshot of her future father-in-law. I want Tyler to see the deed to my house proving it is worth $400,000, not $40 million. I want to blow up the double con from the inside. Leonard smiled a slow, dangerous smile. He closed the binder and handed it to me. Then you are going to need this, he said. And you are going to need a suit. Because if you walk in there looking like a construction worker, they will just laugh at you. You need to look like the man they fear. You need to look like the man who holds the purse strings. I took the binder. It felt heavy in my hands. It was not just paper. It was ammunition. I have a tuxedo, I said. Good, Leonard said, standing up. I will drive. I want to see the look on Marcus Donovan's face when he realizes the game is over. We walked out of the office together. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the pavement. I felt a cold resolve settling in my gut. I had spent my life building things, bridges, roads, foundations. I had always tried to create things that would last. But tonight, I was going to destroy something. I was going to demolish a monument to greed and lies. And I was going to enjoy watching it fall. The drive to my house to change was silent. My mind was racing, rehearsing the confrontation. I thought about the little girl who used to ask me to check under her bed for monsters. I had always told her there were no monsters. I was wrong. The monsters were real. They wore polo shirts and drove leased BMWs. And tonight I was going to drag them out into the light. When I walked into my bedroom to change, I saw the mess Madison had left. The drawers pulled out. the clothes scattered. It was a violation. But it was also a sign of her desperation. She had been looking for the oil money. She had found the decoy safe instead. The fake trust documents I had planted were gone. She had taken the bait. I put on the tuxedo. It was black and sharp. I tied the bow tie with steady hands. I looked in the mirror. The man staring back at me was not Doug the retiree. He was Douglas Hartman, the executioner of illusions. I put the Patek Philippe watch on my wrist. I picked up the leather binder. I walked out to Leonard's car. "Let's go," I said. The restaurant was called The Gilded Steer. It was the kind of place that charged $50 for a steak and $20 for a martini. It was all dark wood and low lighting, designed to make people feel important. We pulled up to the valet stand. I saw Tyler's BMW parked in the front row. It was shiny and sleek and completely unpaid for. We walked past the valet and into the lobby. The hostess looked up, smiling until she saw the look on my face. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, her smile faltering. "I am here for the Donovan rehearsal dinner," I said. "Oh, yes. The private room in the back. Are you a guest?" "I am the financing," I said. She pointed the way. We walked down a long corridor lined with black and white photos of cowboys and oil rigs. The irony was palpable. We reached the double doors at the end of the hall. I could hear laughter and the clinking of glasses inside. They were celebrating. They were toasting their success. I looked at Leonard. He nodded. I pushed the doors open. The room went silent. 30 faces turned to look at me. At the head of the table sat Madison and Tyler holding hands. Next to them were Marcus and Sylvia Donovan, looking regal in their borrowed finery. Madison dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Dad," she whispered. I walked into the room, my footsteps heavy on the plush carpet. I did not smile. I did not apologize. I walked straight to the head of the table and dropped the leather binder in front of Marcus Donovan. It landed with a heavy thud that shook the silverware. "Good evening," I said, my voice filling the room. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding. You seem to think you are attending a wedding, but you are actually attending an audit, and I am the auditor." I sat in the quiet hum of Leonard's office, the air conditioner battling the late afternoon heat, but I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. On the screen of my tablet, the live feed from my bedroom security camera played out in high definition, black and white. It was a silent movie of betrayal, and I was the sole audience member. Leonard stood behind me, his hand resting on the back of my chair, a silent anchor. We didn't speak. We just watched. On the screen, the door to my bedroom splintered. Madison did not pick the lock. She did not use the spare key I had hidden under the flower pot for the last 10 years. She kicked it open. The wood gave way with a violence that made me flinch even though I was miles away. She stepped into the room wearing a dark hoodie pulled low over her face like a common burglar. But I knew that walk. I knew the way she held her head. I had watched her take her first steps on that very floor. I had watched her practice her valedictorian speech in front of that mirror. Now I was watching her invade the sanctuary of my home with the intent to pillage. She moved with a frantic energy. She tore the sheets off the bed. She pulled the drawers out of the antique dresser I had restored by hand, dumping my socks and shirts onto the floor in a heap of fabric. She was not looking for sentimental items. She ignored her mother's jewelry box on the vanity. She ignored the framed photos. She was looking for the paper trail of the lie she had told. She moved to the closet. I saw her drop to her knees and pull back the carpet in the corner. She knew where the floor safe was. I had shown her when she was 18, telling her that if anything ever happened to me, the deed to the house and some emergency cash were in there. I had trusted her with the combination. She punched the numbers into the keypad. I watched her fingers fly. 1, 9, 9, 5. Her birth year. The light on the safe blinked red. I had changed the code that morning. It was a small, petty act of defense, but seeing her reaction gave me a grim satisfaction. She punched it again. Red light. She tried a third time, slamming her palm against the metal door when it refused to yield. Then she did something that broke the last thread of hope I didn't even know I was still holding. She reached into her oversized bag and pulled out a claw hammer. It was a framing hammer, heavy steel with a rubber grip. It was my hammer. She must have taken it from the garage on her way in. The irony was suffocating. The tool I had used to build the roof over her head was now being used to destroy the foundation of our relationship. She raised the hammer and brought it down on the keypad. The impact didn't make a sound on my muted tablet, but I felt it. I felt it in my teeth. She swung again and again. She was not a thief picking a lock. She was a vandal. She was screaming something I couldn't hear, her face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. She looked ugly. Not physically, but spiritually. The entitlement was oozing off her like sweat. The keypad shattered. The electronic lock was destroyed, but the safe was hardened steel. She couldn't get in that way. She realized it after the fifth swing. She dropped the hammer and put her head in her hands, rocking back and forth on her knees. Then she saw it. I had left the decoy folder not inside the safe, but taped to the underside of the loose floorboard that covered it. It was a fail-safe, a trap designed for a desperate person who wasn't thinking clearly. She ripped the blue folder from the wood. She opened it with trembling hands. I zoomed in on the screen. I could see the hunger in her eyes as she scanned the pages. These were the documents Leonard and I had fabricated just hours ago. They were masterpieces of fiction. The Hartman Family Oil and Mineral Trust, a balance sheet showing assets of $52 million, a distribution schedule that promised a monthly payout of $50,000 to the beneficiary upon marriage. It was the lie she wanted to believe. It was the fuel for her fire. I watched her face transform. The rage vanished. The fear evaporated. In their place came a smile that chilled my blood. It was a smile of absolute triumph. She hugged the folder to her chest. She laughed. I saw her shoulders shaking with it. She kissed the paper. She stood up, leaving the hammer on the floor, leaving my room in ruins. She didn't look back. She walked out of the frame, clutching her prize, believing she had just won the lottery. I turned off the tablet. The screen went black, reflecting my own tired face. "She took the bait," Leonard said softly. "She took a hammer to my safe, Leo." I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. "She tried to smash her way into my life because she couldn't guess the code anymore. She is desperate, Doug, and now she is dangerous because she thinks she has leverage. She thinks that folder proves you are holding out on her. She is going to take that to the dinner and wave it in Tyler's face." "Oh, I know," I said. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't pain anymore. It was a cauterization. The heat of her betrayal had burned away the nerve endings. I had spent the last 3 days mourning the daughter I thought I had. I had grieved for the relationship I thought we shared. But watching her swing that hammer, watching her loot my room without a shred of guilt or hesitation, it freed me. The daughter I loved didn't exist. She was a fiction I had written in my head to excuse her selfishness. The woman on that screen was a stranger, a predator, and you do not negotiate with predators, you trap them. "She thinks she found the money," I said, turning back to Leonard. "She thinks she found the solution to all her problems. She is going to walk into that restaurant tonight feeling invincible." "And the Donovans will believe her," Leonard added, "because they are drowning, and that folder is a life preserver." "Exactly." I buttoned my tuxedo jacket. "They will be drunk on relief. They will be arrogant. They will think they have me cornered." I looked at the Patek Philippe on my wrist. The second hand swept around the dial, steady and relentless. "It is time, Leo. Let's go finish this." "Are you okay, Doug?" Leonard asked, searching my face. "Seeing that it's not easy." I'm fine. I lied. I'm just a contractor, Leo. I spot the rot, I remove it, and then I rebuild. Tonight is demolition night. I walked out of the office, leaving the image of my destroyed bedroom behind me. I didn't care about the mess. I would clean it up later. Or better yet, I would sell the house as is. It didn't feel like home anymore anyway. It was just a crime scene now. And I was the witness who was about to testify. The air inside the private dining room of the Gilded Steer was thick with the scent of roasted prime rib and the cloying perfume of unearned victory. I stood in the doorway for a moment, my hand still on the brass handle, watching them before they saw me. It was a tableau of pure delusion. There were about 30 people in the room. Half of them were Tyler's so-called investors, men in shiny suits who laughed too loudly at jokes that were not funny. The other half were the Donovans and their entourage, looking like royalty in exile, holding court over a kingdom of ash. At the center of it all sat Madison and Tyler. They did not look like a couple on the brink of financial ruin. They looked intoxicated. Not with alcohol, though there were plenty of empty champagne bottles on the table, but with relief. The blue folder, the decoy I had planted in the floor safe, sat on the white tablecloth right next to the centerpiece of imported orchids. Madison kept touching it. She stroked the cover like it was a pet. To her, that folder was not just paper. It was a shield. It was the proof she needed to show the Donovans that she was not a fraud. It was the $52 million lie that she believed was true. I watched Tyler lean over and whisper something to his father, Marcus. The disgraced doctor nodded, his eyes locked on the blue folder with a hunger that was almost feral. They had swallowed the bait, hook, line, and sinker. They thought I was a senile old miser hoarding a fortune that they had just liberated. They thought I was walking into this room to surrender. I stepped fully into the light. Tyler was the first to spot me. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. A silence rippled through the room, starting at the head table and spreading outward until the only sound was the clinking of silverware from a waiter in the corner. Tyler smiled. It was the smile of a shark that thinks it has cornered a seal. He buttoned his jacket and walked around the table to meet me. He did not look angry anymore. He looked magnanimous. He looked like a man who had already spent the money in his head. Douglas, he boomed, his voice projecting to the back of the room. We were not sure you would make it. We thought perhaps you had forgotten. The guests chuckled nervously. Tyler was playing to the crowd, setting the narrative. He was painting me as the confused elderly relative, the burden they were graciously tolerating. I looked at him. I looked at the sweat beading on his upper lip, despite the air conditioning. I never forget an appointment, Tyler, I said, my voice level. Especially when it involves my family. Madison stood up then. She walked toward me, clutching the blue folder to her chest. She looked beautiful in her white rehearsal dress, but her eyes were hard. She stopped a foot away from me. She smelled of expensive wine and fear. I am glad you came, Dad, she said, loud enough for the Donovans to hear. I am glad you decided to do the right thing. We know you have been struggling lately. We know you have been confused about the assets. But we are here to help you. She was doubling down on the dementia narrative. She was telling this room full of strangers that I was mentally incompetent, so that when she took control of the money, it would look like an act of mercy, not theft. It was a brilliant strategy if it were based on anything other than a fabrication. I looked past her to Marcus and Sylvia Donovan. They were watching me with intense scrutiny. Sylvia adjusted a diamond necklace that I knew from Leonard's report was likely paste or leased. She gave me a tight, condescending smile. She thought she was looking at an oil baron who had lost his marbles. She thought she was looking at her retirement plan. Madison leaned in close, dropping her voice to a hiss so only I could hear. We found the trust documents, Dad. We know about the $50 million. We know you need a guardian to access it. Don't make a scene. Just sign the papers Tyler has, and we will take care of you. We won't put you in a home. We will build you a suite in the new house. Just sign. She really believed it. She believed the lie so completely that she was offering me a guest room in a mansion she couldn't afford, paid for with money I didn't have. I looked at her and I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The sadness was gone. There was only the cold calculation of the demolition expert checking the charges one last time. "Is that what you think this is, Madison?" I asked quietly. "A negotiation?" "It is an intervention," she whispered. "You are not well. You are hoarding wealth while your family suffers. That isn't you. That is the sickness talking. We are just doing what is best for the estate." She stepped back and turned to the room, her face transforming into a mask of loving concern. "Everyone please welcome my father, Douglas Hartman. He has had a difficult time with his health recently, but he wanted to be here to give his blessing." There was a scattering of polite applause. Tyler clapped the loudest. He gestured for me to come to the head of the table. "Soon. Come sit, Doug. Have a drink. We have papers for you to sign later. Just a formality to transfer the venue costs and secure the trust administration. Nothing to worry about." I walked to the front of the room. I did not sit. I stood at the head of the table, looming over Marcus and Sylvia. Up close, I could see the fraying threads on Marcus's cuffs. I could see the terror behind Sylvia's heavy makeup. They were holding their breath, waiting for the transaction to close. Tyler slid a glass of champagne toward me. "To family," he said, raising his own glass. "To legacy. And to the future." I looked at the bubbling liquid. It looked expensive. It probably cost more than the hourly wage of the men who poured the foundation for this building. I picked up the glass. The room went silent again, anticipating a toast. I looked at Madison. She was smiling, nodding, encouraging me to play my part in her play. She wanted the oil baron. She wanted the eccentric billionaire. I turned to face the room. I looked at the investors. I looked at the friends. I looked at the people who had bought tickets to a show that was about to be canceled. "I am not here to toast," I said, my voice carrying to the corners of the room without shouting. "I am here to clarify a few accounting errors." Tyler's smile faltered. "Dad, let's not do this now," he said, stepping forward. "Sit down, Tyler," I snapped. The command crackled with the authority of 40 years running job sites. Tyler sat. I placed the leather binder Leonard had given me on the table. It landed with a heavy thud right next to the blue decoy folder Madison was guarding. "You seem to be under the impression that you are attending a wedding rehearsal," I continued. "You seem to believe that you are in the presence of wealth and status. My daughter has told you that I am an oil tycoon. She has told you that I am dead or senile depending on which day you asked her." I paused. I saw Marcus Donovan stiffen. I saw Sylvia reach for her husband's hand. "I am neither dead nor senile," I said. "I am a retired construction contractor. I built bridges. I poured concrete. I made a good living by working hard and saving every dime. I do not have $50 million in a trust fund. That blue folder my daughter is holding is a prop. I planted it in my safe this morning because I knew she would break into my house to steal it." Madison gasped. She looked down at the blue folder as if it had turned into a snake. "It is fake, Madison," I said. "Just like this wedding. Just like your fiancé's career. Just like his parents' fortune." Tyler stood up, knocking his chair over. "That is a lie. He is confused. Get him out of here." I opened the leather binder. "I have copies for everyone," I said, pulling out the mugshot of Marcus Donovan. "This is Dr. Donovan. He isn't retired. He lost his medical license for operating while high on opioids. He is currently unemployed and insolvent." I pulled out the foreclosure notice. "This is the Donovan estate. It is owned by the bank. They are being evicted in 12 days. I pulled out the IRS audit letter. This is Sylvia Donovan's charity. It is currently under federal investigation for fraud." I threw the papers onto the table. They scattered across the white linen, sliding over the untouched appetizers. "This is not a marriage," I said, looking at the stunned faces of the guests. "This is a merger of debts. They are all broke. And they invited you here to watch them try to rob the only man in the room who actually paid off his mortgage." The room erupted. The valet looked at my truck with a sneer that vanished the moment I stepped out. It wasn't just the tuxedo that changed his mind. It was the way I wore it. I didn't look like a man going to a costume party. I looked like a man who owned the block. The Tom Ford suit was midnight blue so dark it swallowed the light under the street lamps. It was cut from Italian wool that felt like water against my skin, and it fit differently than my work clothes. My canvas jackets and denim jeans were armor against the elements designed to take a beating. This suit was a weapon designed to deliver one. It squared my shoulders and lengthened my spine. It didn't restrict my movement, it amplified it. When I buttoned the jacket, I felt a click in my psyche like a safety being disengaged on a rifle. I adjusted the cuffs. The Patek Philippe watch on my left wrist caught the light. It was a heavy piece of machinery, silent and precise, worth more than the down payment on the house Madison was trying to steal. I had never worn it in front of her. I had kept it in a safety deposit box, not because I was afraid of losing it, but because I didn't want her to love me for the gold on my wrist. I wanted her to love the calluses on my hands. That was a mistake. I see that now. People like Madison and the Donovans don't speak the language of labor. They only speak the language of luxury. So tonight, I was fluent. Leonard walked beside me carrying the leather binder. He wore a gray suit that looked like it had seen a few courtrooms, but he walked with the same predatory grace I felt. We didn't speak as we entered the Gilded Steer. We didn't need to. We were on a mission. The lobby was a temple to excess. Dark mahogany paneling, velvet drapes, a chandelier that looked like a frozen explosion of crystal. The air smelled of expensive steak and old money, or at least the imitation of old money. The hostess, a young woman with a clipboard and a practiced smile, looked up as we approached. Her eyes scanned me. She saw the cut of the suit. She saw the watch. She saw the way I didn't look around for approval. Her smile shifted from professional to deferential. "Right this way, sir," she said, before I even opened my mouth. "The Donovan party is in the executive room." I nodded. I didn't thank her. Men who own the building don't thank people for letting them in. I walked past her, my footsteps muffled by the thick Persian rugs. The hallway was long lined with oil paintings of cattle barons and oil derricks. The irony was so thick I could taste it. This was the fantasy Madison had sold them. This was the stage she had set. And I was the lead actor who had finally decided to show up for the performance. We reached the double doors at the end of the hall. They were solid oak, heavy and imposing. I could hear the hum of conversation from the other side. Laughter. The clinking of silverware on fine china. The sound of a toast being made. It was the sound of people celebrating a robbery they thought they had gotten away with. I stopped. I placed my hand on the brass handle. The metal was cool under my palm. I took a breath. Not a nervous breath. A centering breath. The kind you take before you swing the sledgehammer at a load-bearing wall, knowing that once you strike, the structure will never be the same. I pushed the doors open. The room was bathed in the soft golden glow of vintage sconces. A long table stretched down the center, covered in white linen and crystal. There were about 30 people seated. Men in shiny suits that looked expensive from a distance but cheap up close. Women with hair sprayed into helmets of blonde and jewelry that sparkled too aggressively. It was a gathering of peacocks. At the head of the table sat Madison and Tyler. They were holding hands. Madison was laughing at something Marcus Donovan was saying. She looked radiant. She looked relieved. The blue decoy folder was sitting right there on the table next to her wine glass. Her shield, her proof. I stepped into the room. Leonard followed, closing the doors behind us with a heavy thud that cut through the ambient noise like a thunderclap. The silence didn't happen all at once. It spread like a wave. First, the people near the door stopped talking. They turned to look. They saw a tall, broad-shouldered man in a tuxedo that cost $5,000 standing with the stillness of a statue. They didn't know who I was, but they knew I wasn't the waiter. Then the silence reached the middle of the table. Tyler's mother, Sylvia, looked up. Her eyes went wide. She nudged Marcus. The disgraced doctor turned his glass of scotch halfway to his mouth. He froze. He looked at me with the confused squint of a man trying to reconcile a rumor with reality. He was expecting a ghost or a senile invalid. Instead, he was looking at a man who looked like he could buy the restaurant and fire the staff just for sport. Finally, the silence reached the head of the table. Madison turned. Her smile died. It didn't fade, it vanished instantly, replaced by a look of absolute primal shock. Her face went the color of the tablecloth. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked from me to the blue folder, then back to me. Her brain was misfiring. She couldn't process the data. This was the father she had erased. This was the construction worker she was ashamed of. But I didn't look like him. I looked like the lie she had told. I looked like the oil baron. Tyler stood up halfway, his chair scraping against the floor. He looked like a child who had been caught playing with his father's gun. He stared at my suit. He stared at the way I held myself. He had called me a dirt digger this morning. He had mocked my home. Now he was looking at a man who radiated more power in his silence than Tyler had in his entire life. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice melting in the champagne buckets. I didn't speak immediately. I let them look. I let them soak it in. I wanted them to see every thread of the Italian wool. I wanted them to see the polish on my shoes. I wanted them to see that the man they had dismissed as a rugged relic was actually a fortress they had failed to breach. I walked toward the table. My gait was slow-measured. Every step was a statement. I walked past the investors in their polyester blends. I walked past the socialites with their leased handbags. I felt their eyes on me. They were judging me, but not in the way Madison feared. They were intimidated. They smelled money. They smelled authority. And in their world, those were the only two things that mattered. I stopped at the foot of the table directly opposite Madison and the Donovans. The distance between us was 20 feet of white linen and expensive flowers, but it felt like a canyon. Marcus Donovan was the first to recover, or at least attempt to. He stood up, buttoning his jacket with shaking fingers. He put on his best country club smile, the one he used to charm patients before he botched their surgeries. "I don't believe we have been introduced," he said, his voice smooth but thin. "I am Dr. Marcus Donovan, and you are." He didn't know. Madison had done such a good job of killing me off that he didn't recognize the resurrection standing in front of him. I looked at him. I didn't shake his hand. I didn't smile. "I know who you are, Marcus," I said. My voice was deep resonant. It carried to every corner of the room without effort. "I know about the license. I know about the opioids. I know about the foreclosure." Marcus flinched as if I had slapped him. The smile dropped. His eyes darted around the room, checking to see who had heard. Everyone had heard. Madison let out a sound, a strangled whimper. "Dad," she whispered. The word hung in the air. "Dad." Sylvia Donovan gasped. She brought a hand to her throat, clutching her fake pearls. She looked from Madison to me, then back to Madison. The realization hit her. This was the father, the dead father, the oil baron. "But he is alive," Sylvia hissed at Madison. "You said he was dead." "He was unavailable." Madison stammered, her eyes locked on mine, terrified. "He was away." I looked at my daughter. She looked small. She looked like a little girl playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. But I felt no pity. Pity is for victims. She was a conspirator. "I am not away, Madison," I said. "I am right here, and I am very much alive." I turned my gaze to Tyler. He had sunk back into his chair, looking deflated. The bully from this morning was gone. In his place was a coward who realized he had picked a fight with the wrong weight class. "You boys like to talk about image, don't you?" I said, addressing the room but looking at Tyler. "You like to talk about status. You like to pretend that the clothes make the man. Well, look at me, Tyler. Do I look like a dirt digger to you now?" Tyler swallowed hard. "No, sir," he mumbled. "Good. Because we need to clarify a few things about the Hartman estate. We need to correct the record." I reached out and took the leather binder from Leonard. I placed it on the empty chair next to me. I unbuttoned my jacket and sat down. I did not ask for permission. I took the seat at the foot of the table, and by simply existing there, I turned it into the head of the table. The room waited. They were captivated. They were watching a train wreck, and they couldn't look away. They thought they were attending a rehearsal dinner for a wedding. They didn't realize they were attending a funeral for their own reputations. I opened the binder. The sound of the metal rings snapping open was the only sound in the world. "Shall we begin?" I asked. I stood up from the table. The movement was slow and deliberate, a tectonic shift that demanded attention. I buttoned my tuxedo jacket with one hand and picked up the leather binder with the other. I walked to the small stage at the front of the room, where a microphone stand waited for a best man speech that would never happen. I adjusted the height of the stand. The feedback whine cut through the air, making the guests wince. It was a harsh sound, a warning siren. Leonard moved with the efficiency of a field medic. He connected his laptop to the room's AV system. The large projection screen behind me descended from the ceiling with a mechanical hum. The white canvas unrolled slowly, blank and expectant like a shroud. I tapped the microphone. The sound thumped in the chest of everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said. My voice was amplified, filling the space, pressing against the velvet curtains. "I want to thank you for coming. You were invited here to witness a union, to celebrate the merging of two families. But before we proceed with the festivities, I think it is important that we review the assets. In my line of work, you never pour concrete until you have tested the soil. And this soil is toxic." I nodded to Leonard. He hit a key. The screen behind me lit up. It was not a slideshow of childhood photos. It was not a montage of the happy couple. It was a screenshot of a text message. It was 10 feet tall. The letters were crisp and black against the white background. It was the message Madison had sent me 3 days ago. "Do not come to my wedding. You are no longer my family. I told them you passed away." A gasp rippled through the room. It was a physical sound, a sucking of oxygen. I saw a woman in pearls cover her mouth. I saw the investors exchange nervous glances. Madison stood up. Her chair fell backward, crashing to the floor. "Turn it off!" she screamed, her voice shrill and terrified. "Turn it off right now!" I ignored her. I looked at the guests. "My daughter told you I was dead," I said calmly. "She told you I was an oil baron. She told you whatever she needed to tell you to get into this room. But the truth is simpler. She was ashamed. She was ashamed that her money came from sweat and dirt and calloused hands. She wanted the check, but she didn't want the man who signed it." I looked at Madison. She was trembling, clutching the edge of the table, her knuckles white. She looked at Tyler for help, but Tyler was staring at the screen, paralyzed. Leonard hit the next key. The screen changed. Now it displayed a spreadsheet. It was a detailed, itemized list of credit card statements from the supplementary card I had given Madison. "This is the cost of the image," I said, pointing to the screen. "In the last 3 years, my daughter has spent $150,000 of my money. Not on rent, not on tuition, on handbags, on shoes, on trips to Cabo, on the appearance of wealth." I read the entries aloud, my voice monotone like a judge reading a verdict. $3,000 at Louis Vuitton. $5,000 at the Ritz-Carlton. $2,000 for a bottle service table at a club in Miami. I turned to the Donovans. Sylvia was pale, her makeup standing out like a mask on her gray skin. "You thought she was an heiress," I said. "You thought she had a trust fund. She does not. She has a father who worked 18-hour days to give her a safety net, and she used it to build a hammock. She has 0 assets. She has 0 savings. She is drowning in debt that I have been paying off in secret for years." Madison was crying now. Not the pretty crying of a victim, but the ugly sobbing of someone who has been stripped naked in public. "Dad, please stop," she wailed. "Everyone is looking." "Let them look," I roared, my voice cracking with the force of my anger. "Let them see. You wanted to be the center of attention, Madison. You wanted to be the star. Well, you are on stage now. Take a bow." Tyler jumped up. "This is slander," he shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You are a bitter old man trying to ruin us. I will sue you for everything you have." I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Sue me with what money, Tyler?" I asked. I nodded to Leonard. The screen changed again. This time it showed a series of legal documents, bankruptcy filings, gambling debt collections, a credit report that was more red than black. "This is your entrepreneur," I said to the room. "This is the tech visionary. Tyler Donovan has filed for bankruptcy twice in the last 5 years. He currently owes $80,000 to a sports book in Las Vegas. He has no startup. He has no patents. He has a leased car and a suit he bought on a credit card that is maxed out." I looked at Madison. She had stopped crying. She was staring at the screen, her eyes wide with horror. She looked at the numbers. She looked at the dates. She looked at Tyler. "You said you sold your company," she whispered. "You said you had millions in escrow." Tyler turned on her, his face twisted with panic. "He is lying, Madison. He forged these. He is trying to break us up. I forged nothing, I said. These are public records, Tyler. Anyone with an internet connection and $50 can find them. You didn't look because you didn't want to know. You were too busy spending the money you thought I had." I stepped off the stage and walked toward the table. I walked until I was standing right in front of Marcus and Sylvia. They were huddled together like rats on a sinking ship. "And now for the main event," I said softly. "The pillars of the community. The elite." Leonard hit the final key. The screen filled with the mugshot of Dr. Marcus Donovan. It was unflattering. His hair was messy, his eyes glazed. Below it was the text of the medical board's decision to revoke his license for opioid abuse and gross negligence. Next to it was the foreclosure notice for the Beverly Hills mansion, stamped with a bright red eviction date that was 12 days away. And finally, the IRS audit letter regarding Sylvia's charity foundation. The room was silent. Deadly silent. The kind of silence that comes after a bomb goes off, but before the screaming starts. The investors at the other tables stood up. They were looking at Marcus with expressions of pure fury. They realized in that moment that their investments were gone, that the man they trusted was a fraud. "Marcus Donovan is not retired," I said, my voice ringing in the stillness. "He is disgraced. He is unemployed. He is broke. And Sylvia Donovan is not a philanthropist. She is a thief who is stealing money from orphans to pay for her facelifts." I leaned over the table, placing my hands on the white linen. I looked Sylvia in the eye. "You didn't want my daughter because you loved her," I said. "You wanted her because you thought she was a bailout. You thought my imaginary oil money would save your house. You thought you could use her to pay your debts." Sylvia began to shake. Her facade cracked. The socialite vanished, and beneath was just a scared, desperate woman who had run out of road. We didn't," she stammered. "You did. I cut her off. You conned her, she conned you, and Tyler conned everyone. It is a perfect circle of lies." I stood up straight and buttoned my jacket. I felt light. I felt clean. The weight of the secret was gone. I looked at Madison one last time. She was sitting in the wreckage of her fantasy. She looked at Tyler, who was looking at the floor. She looked at his parents, who were looking at each other with hatred. She looked at the guests, who were looking at their phones, presumably canceling their checks. Then she looked at me. "Dad," she said, her voice small and broken. "Dad, I didn't know. I know you didn't," I said. "Because you never asked. You never looked past the truck, Madison. You never looked past the flannel. You saw what you wanted to see, and now you see the truth. I gestured to the room. This is your wedding, Madison. These are your people. This is the life you chose. You wanted elite. You wanted status. Well, here it is. It is bankrupt. It is fraudulent. And it is all yours. I turned to Leonard. We are done here, Leo. We walked toward the door. The silence held for 3 seconds. Then the chaos began. I heard a glass break. I heard Marcus Donovan shouting at Sylvia. I heard Tyler screaming at Madison. I heard the investors demanding answers. I didn't look back. I pushed the heavy oak doors open and stepped out into the hallway. The air in the corridor was cool and quiet. The framed photos of oil barons looked down at me. I winked at one of them. We walked to the lobby. The hostess smiled at us, oblivious to the carnage in the back room. Have a good night, sir, she said. I will, I said. I really will. We walked out to the valet stand. My truck was waiting there, shiny and solid amidst the sea of luxury cars. I tipped the valet $100. He looked at it, then at me, then at the truck. Nice tux, boss, he said. Nice truck, son, I replied. I got in. Leonard got in the passenger seat. I started the engine. The rumble of the V8 was the best sound I had heard all day. As we pulled away, I saw the first police cruiser turning into the parking lot. Lights flashing. I had called them on the way out. Trespassing. Fraud. Breach of peace. I wasn't sure what charges would stick, but I knew the party was over. I drove toward the highway. I loosened my tie. How do you feel? Doug Leonard asked quietly. I feel like I just demolished a condemned building, Leo, I said. It is a mess right now, but at least it won't fall on anyone else. I merged onto the interstate. The city lights faded in the rearview mirror. I was 73 years old. I had no wife. I had no daughter. I had no house full of memories because I was going to sell it tomorrow. But I had a full tank of gas. I had $4.5 million. And for the first time in a long time, I had the truth. And that was enough. That was more than enough. I did not drive away immediately. I sat in the cab of my truck with the engine idling and the air conditioner humming against the humid night air. Leonard looked at me from the passenger seat. He did not ask why we were waiting. He knew. You do not light a fuse and walk away without watching the explosion. You stay to confirm the structure is down. You stay to ensure the job is finished. Through the large glass windows of the Gilded Steer, I could see the chaos unfolding in the lobby. It was like watching a silent film of a riot. The double doors to the private room had burst open, spilling the Donovans and their guests into the hallway. It was not a dignified exit. It was a rout. I rolled down the window. The sound of shouting cut through the parking lot. You lying little witch, I heard Marcus Donovan scream. His voice was a ragged tear in the night. You told us he was dead. You told us there were millions. I watched as Marcus cornered Madison near the hostess stand. The disgraced doctor looked manic, his face purple with rage. He was not shouting at her because she had lied about her father being alive. He was shouting because she had lied about the money that was supposed to save him from prison. He was shouting because his life raft had just turned out to be an anchor. Madison was backing away, her hands raised in a pathetic, defensive posture. She was crying, but no one was comforting her. Tyler stood a few feet away, stripping off his tie as if it were a noose. He was not helping her. He was looking at her with a mixture of hatred and panic that was purer than any love he had ever feigned. You knew, Tyler shouted, pointing a finger at Madison. You knew he was a construction worker. You let me think I was marrying into oil. I leveraged everything on this. You used me, Madison shrieked back, her voice cracking. You only proposed because you saw my credit check. You are a loser, Tyler. A broke loser with a leased life. Sylvia Donovan threw her purse at Madison. It missed hitting a waiter who was trying to intervene. You ruined us, Sylvia wailed. We are going to lose the house. We are going to lose everything because of your trash family. It was a feeding frenzy. The sharks were starving and they had turned on each other. They were tearing strips off one another, trying to assign blame for a disaster they had all built together. It was ugly. It was violent. And it was the most honest moment they had ever shared. Then the blue lights washed over them. 2 squad cars pulled up to the curb, tires crunching on the gravel. Sheriff Miller stepped out of the first one. He was a big man who had played linebacker in college and still moved like he was looking for a tackle. He adjusted his belt and walked toward the entrance. 2 deputies followed him. I watched as the restaurant manager, a man in a tuxedo, who looked like he was about to have a stroke, pointed frantically at the group. He was shouting about the bill, about theft of services, about a $20,000 tab that no one could pay. Miller walked straight to Madison. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw her face go slack. She shook her head, pointing back at the private room, pointing at Tyler, pointing at anyone but herself. Miller pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. I saw Madison flinch. She tried to pull away, but the deputies were there. They spun her around. The metal cuffs flashed under the lobby chandelier. They were not arresting her for the bill. That was a civil matter. They were arresting her for burglary. I had sent the video of her breaking into my safe to Miller an hour ago. Breaking and entering. Destruction of property. Attempted grand larceny. It was all there in high definition. Tyler tried to run. It was a stupid instinct born of panic. He bolted toward the side exit, pushing past his mother. He didn't make it 3 steps. One of the deputies tackled him into a display of decorative plants. The pot shattered. Tyler went down screaming about his rights, about his lawyer, about his shoulder. They dragged him up. He was limp, crying like a child. They cuffed him too. Leonard had found an outstanding warrant for Tyler in a neighboring county for check fraud. It was a small charge, but it was enough to put him in the back of a cruiser tonight. The guests, the investors, and the hangers-on were scattering like cockroaches when the lights come on. They were rushing to their cars, trying to distance themselves from the stench of failure. Marcus and Sylvia stood alone in the lobby, watching their son and their golden ticket being hauled away. They looked old. They looked broken. The IRS agents would be coming for them soon enough. Tonight was just the preview. The deputies led Madison and Tyler out the front doors. Madison looked up. She saw my truck idling in the shadows. She saw me sitting there in my tuxedo, my arm resting on the window frame. Our eyes met. She stopped fighting. She stopped screaming. She just looked at me. In that moment, the entitlement was gone. The arrogance was gone. There was only the stark realization that she had gambled her father's love for a chance at a stranger's money, and she had lost both. She mouthed the word "Dad." I didn't respond. I didn't nod. I simply rolled up the window. The tinted glass slid shut, cutting off the connection, sealing me inside my own space. I put the truck in gear. Leonard looked at me. "Is it done?" he asked. "It is done," I said. I pulled out of the parking lot, driving past the police cars, past the weeping Donovans, past the wreckage of the rehearsal dinner. I didn't speed. I drove with the steady calm of a man who has finished a long, hard job and is finally going home to rest. The bridge was burned, the dust was settling, and the road ahead was wide open. The morning after the arrests, I did not sleep in. I woke up at 5 o'clock out of habit, the sun just beginning to bleed through the blinds of a bedroom that felt like a stranger's. The house was quiet, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the silence of a tomb. I walked through the rooms, touching the door frames I had installed, the walls I had painted. I felt nothing. The spirit of the house had left the moment Madison tried to rob it. It was just wood and sheetrock now, a structure that had served its purpose and was now obsolete. I called a realtor I knew, a woman named Sarah, who sold houses the way I built bridges, with no nonsense and a focus on the foundation. "I want it gone, Sarah," I said into the phone. "Douglas, the market is soft," she warned. "If you want top dollar, we need to stage it. We need to paint. We need to," I interrupted her. "I don't want top dollar. I want an exit. List it today. Price it to sell by the weekend. Sell it as is." I spent the next 2 days purging. I didn't pack. I threw away. I rented a dumpster and filled it with the debris of a life that no longer fit. The velvet recliner Tyler had mocked went in first. The dining table where we had eaten silent tense Thanksgiving dinners followed. I went into the attic and found boxes of Madison's childhood things. Old report cards. Participation trophies. A stuffed bear I had won for her at a county fair. I held the bear for a long moment, remembering the way she had squealed when I handed it to her. Then I tossed it into the dumpster. That little girl didn't exist anymore. Keeping her toys felt like keeping a shrine to a ghost. I kept very little. My tools, my books, a few framed photos of my late wife. I packed them into 3 plastic bins. That was it. 73 years of life distilled down to the essentials. On the 3rd day, Sarah brought me an offer. It was from a young couple, a mechanic and a nurse who were expecting their first child. They didn't have much money, but they had steady jobs, and they looked at the solid oak floors with appreciation, not disdain. I accepted the offer. I signed the papers on the kitchen counter. When I handed the keys to the young mechanic, he shook my hand with a grip that was firm and calloused. "I will take care of it, sir," he said. "I know you will, son," I replied. "It is a good house. It just needs a new family." With the check from the house sale deposited into my account alongside the millions Madison had tried to steal, I had one more stop to make before I left town. I drove to the local vocational college, the place where I had learned to weld 50 years ago. I walked into the dean's office in my work boots and flannel shirt. "I want to start a scholarship," I said. The dean looked surprised. "That is very generous, Mr. Hartman. What are the criteria?" "It is for the kids who want to build things," I said. "For the ones who aren't afraid of dirt. For the ones who know that a hard day's work is its own reward. And I want a clause. If they ever lie about who they are or where they came from, they lose the money." I wrote a check for $250,000. It felt better than writing a check for a wedding venue. It felt like planting seeds in fertile ground instead of throwing cash into a fire. Then I drove to the RV dealership on the edge of the highway. I had driven past it 1,000 times over the years, looking at the gleaming metal beasts and dreaming of a day when I wouldn't have a schedule. That day was today. I didn't browse. I knew what I wanted. I walked straight to the back of the lot to the custom line. I pointed at a 45-foot Class A motorhome. It was a masterpiece of engineering, a diesel pusher with a chassis that could handle mountain passes and an interior that was nicer than the Ritz-Carlton. It had marble countertops, heated floors, and a king-sized bed. It was a fortress on wheels. "I will take it," I told the salesman. "We can arrange financing," he offered, eyeing my truck. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. "I will wire the funds," I said. "I want to drive it off the lot in an hour." An hour later, I was sitting in the driver's seat. The engine rumbled beneath me, a deep, powerful vibration that felt like freedom. I transferred my 3 bins of belongings into the storage bays. I locked my truck and left it there with the title on the seat and a note for the salesman to sell it or scrap it. I didn't need it anymore. I sat in the captain's chair and looked at the dashboard. It was lit up like a cockpit. I adjusted the mirrors. I checked the fuel gauge. Full. I entered a destination into the GPS. Not a specific address, just a direction. West. I wanted to see the Grand Canyon. I wanted to see the Pacific Ocean. I wanted to see places where the only thing that mattered was the scale of the horizon. I released the parking brake. The massive vehicle hissed and began to roll forward. I pulled out onto the highway, merging into the traffic. I was 73 years old. I was homeless. I was childless. And I had never felt lighter in my life. The rearview mirror showed the town receding into the distance, a cluster of buildings and memories that were getting smaller by the second. I didn't look back for long. I turned my eyes to the road ahead. The asphalt was gray and endless, and it belonged to me. The asphalt of Route 66 stretched out ahead of me like a black ribbon cutting through the Arizona desert. The heat waves shimmered off the road, creating mirages of water that didn't exist, just like the life I had left behind. I had been driving for 3 days straight, stopping only for diesel and black coffee. The hum of the engine was a constant companion, a lullaby of horsepower that drowned out the silence in my head. I was somewhere outside of Kingman when the phone sitting on the dashboard lit up. It wasn't a text message this time. It wasn't an email. It was a call. I glanced at the screen. The caller ID didn't say Madison. It read County Correctional Facility. Below that, in smaller letters, it said, Collect call from an inmate. I stared at the words. I took my foot off the accelerator, letting the massive RV coast for a moment. I could imagine her on the other end. She would be wearing an orange jumpsuit that didn't fit, huddled in a common room, smelling of bleach and despair. She would be crying. She would be begging. She would be promising to change, just like she had promised when she was 16 and wrecked my car. She would want bail. She would want a lawyer. She would want her father back, not because she missed him, but because she needed him. My hand hovered over the accept button. It would be so easy. Just one tap. Just one conversation. I could be the hero one last time. I could turn the rig around, drive back, pay the bond, and fix it all. That is what fathers do, right? They fix things. But then I looked at the horizon. It was vast and indifferent. I knew the physics of sinking ships. If you reach out to save someone who refuses to swim, they will only pull you under. I had spent my life building foundations for other people. It was time to build one for myself. I realized that answering that call wasn't an act of love. It would be an act of surrender. It would be admitting that her abuse was acceptable as long as she needed me. I didn't press accept. Instead, I pressed the button to roll down the driver's side window. The desert air rushed in hot and dry, tasting of sagebrush and dust. It filled the cabin, swirling around me like a cleansing wind. I picked up the phone. It was still vibrating, still demanding my attention, still trying to drag me back into the mud. I felt the weight of it in my hand. It wasn't just a phone. It was a leash. It was the last tether to a man I used to be, a man who thought he could buy respect with sacrifice. I threw it. I didn't just toss it. I hurled it with every ounce of strength left in my 73-year-old arm. I watched it arc through the air, spinning against the endless blue sky. It hit the asphalt at 65 miles an hour. I saw it shatter in the rearview mirror, exploding into a cloud of plastic and glass that was instantly swallowed by the road. The vibration stopped. The connection was broken. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands. I thought I would feel guilt. I waited for the pang of regret. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt a rush of oxygen to my lungs. I realized then that I hadn't lost a daughter. You can't lose something you never really had. I had simply excised a tumor that had been feeding on my spirit for decades. I was not a father anymore. I was not a contractor. I was not a bank account. I was just a man on a road. The horizon was wide and empty, and for the first time in my life, it didn't owe me anything, and I didn't owe it a damn thing. I turned up the radio. The sound of classic rock filled the cabin, drowning out the wind. I pressed the accelerator. The RV surged forward, eating up the miles, leaving the wreckage in the dust where it belonged. I didn't look in the mirror again. I looked forward. I was finally free. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. I spent 40 years trying to build a life for my daughter, thinking that my sweat and sacrifice were the currency of love. I was wrong. You cannot build a sturdy home on a foundation of lies, and no amount of money can buy character for someone who has none. I realized that walking away was not an act of cruelty, it was an act of self-preservation. Sometimes the hardest bridge to cross is the one that leads you away from the people you love but who do not know how to love you back. True freedom is not about having millions in the bank. It is about realizing you are enough just as you are without having to pay for a seat at your own table. If you enjoyed this story of justice, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. Tell me in the comments, would you have answered that final call from jail?